morning, everybody. I will kick off with an introduction as people continue to join us. Welcome to our webinar. My name is Susie Duncan and I'm the Head of Marketing at Daydot. We're a digital optimization agency. This means that we carry out customer research, strategic consultancy, design, build, testing, optimization, all in-house, with the goal to improve and optimize the digital customer experience for our clients and their customers. We run webinars at least every quarter, and the goal is to share our knowledge, bring partners on board, and also brand contacts to share their experiences. So this morning, we're going to be talking about turning one-time buyers into repeat customers. Just a couple of things to say before we begin. We will send you a survey at the end of the session, just for your feedback. It's really important for us that we try and make our webinars and panels as useful as possible. So if you can take a couple of minutes and just fill out those questions, it's literally 2, I think that would be brilliant. And if you want to be a speaker or you have something to say or be on a panel, I'd be more than happy to chat to you about that. I'm always looking for more people to get involved. So please contact me. And finally, the session is being recorded, as you can probably see, so this will be shared with you afterwards. So this morning, as I said, we're going to do a panel. So it's slightly different to our normal webinar. So I have 4 panelists joining us this morning. Guys, if you can switch your cameras on as I introduce, that would be fab. So first, we have Paul Yallop. So hi, Paul. Paul is a Senior VP of Mid-Market at Glassbox. The Glassbox digital customer experience platform enables brands and agencies to identify end user behaviour and insights to create frictionless digital journeys. At Daydot, we've worked with SessionCam as they were before Glassbox acquired them a couple of years ago, and we use their technology with our clients. So we know Glassbox well. So welcome, Paul.
Hi there.
We also have Aisha Baker-Smith, Head of Marketing at the National Deaf Children's Society. She has been in the charity sector for over 11 years and knows the challenges of building engagement and long-term relationships with multiple stakeholder groups and audiences. So thanks for joining us, Aisha.
Hi.
We also have Anna Lobb from MPP Global, which is a subscriber management and billing platform specialising in media and entertainment. So that includes TV, sport, and also physical products and services that are on recurring revenue models. Anna is VP of Media and Publishing, specifically for EMEA, so she has lots of experience working and advising media clients on the best strategies and tactics to increase customer engagement and retention. We have experience in publishing as well, so that's how we know MPP and Anna.
Morning,
and then finally, morning. And then finally, we have Osh, MD at Daydot. So Osh has a background in paid media, digital optimization and product marketing. So has a wealth of experience helping clients grow their businesses and create satisfying customer experiences. Hey Osh, welcome. So we've got a great panel this morning. I think what we're going to do to begin with, I'm going to switch on a quick poll to ask the audience a quick question. So I just need to find the polls. Where are they? Here we go. So I'm going to just launch that now. So feel free to answer that, everybody, as I'm giving a bit of context to that. So we've all heard the stats. It costs significantly more to acquire a new customer than it does to retain existing customers. I was looking online and I found it's 4 times, 5 times, 6 times. It's definitely more expensive. So traditionally, brands have really focused on acquisition, and that kind of retention and engagement part has been sort of the poor sister, the poor relation. And departments, I think you're finding, work in silo. They don't always look at that smooth experience between those 2 areas of focus for customers. The last couple of years have been pretty turbulent, I think we'll all agree, and customer behaviour and habits have evolved and will continue to evolve as we face new challenges, what feels like every day at the moment. But brands are realising the importance to focus on engagement and retention and bring customers back to their websites again and again. That's my point of view. I think it's probably pretty accurate, but we'll see. We'll see what everybody else thinks. I think brands ultimately want lasting and profitable relationships with customers. Charities want loyal donors and supporters. So engagement retention is becoming even more important. So that was my first question. I will go over to the panel really. Do you agree that the tides are shifting towards engagement and retention and the goal to drive repeat business and customers? Shall I start with Paul?
Yes, I do agree. So look, I think the growth of online since the outbreak of COVID may make it feel like acquiring new customers and growing marketing databases is the answer to business growth. If there are more customers online looking to discover new brands, then you have a better chance of converting them, right? Well, maybe, but maybe not. So while acquisition is still a big priority for lots of brands, competition, we know, is rife. So you're not the only brand to see the revenue opportunities offered by the new increased activity online. Brands like Google, Facebook, and TikTok, and lots of others want to keep users on their channels and clicking on the revenue generating paid ads rather than surfacing new brands organically. And that means that big brands with bigger budgets and maybe the ones succeeding in converting new customers. So retention and repeat customers are more valuable than ever.
Great. Does someone else want to jump in? Anna?
Yeah, I mean, as you said at the start, I guess my focus has been publishing for the last few years. And I think what's really interesting in the publishing sector at the moment is that focus on loyalty-based metrics as opposed to just volume and clicks. And I think it's a really difficult balance because publishers have lots of different revenue streams, whether that be advertising and those types of revenue streams, or whether it be digital formats or even physical formats. But I think certainly in recent years, people are becoming more aware that the thing that they have that is unique, their most valuable asset, is indeed their brand, and how they take that brand and how they create recurring revenue streams around that brand is how they'll create sustainable futures. And increasingly that is all around the sort of recency, frequency, volume, and encouraging their customers, whatever they sell, to build habits around their brand. So I mean that's certainly what we're seeing in subscriptions in the publishing sector at the minute.
Yeah, I think that's mirrored everywhere. Do you agree, Ash?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been a sense of the last, certainly the last 2 years, that a lot of, sort of pure play digital brands have had a captive audience. So it's been a great period of growth over the last couple of years. But the question started to creep in is, okay, what do we do next? We've got all these incredible new customers. Everyone's buying stuff. What do we do? What do we do after that? Is the person who bought a subscription during the pandemic likely to retain? What do we know about these people? What do we know about these customers? What motivates them? How can we do more engagement? And I think Joanna's point is building those kind of habits. Is understanding what are the micro actions that users can take that have a propensity to renew, and how can we start to guide people down that path. And that's something that a lot of brands are now starting to look at, albeit not necessarily having the answer as to how to go about doing that.
Yeah, Aisha, from a charity perspective, is it in line, do you think?
I would say that historically charities have always considered retention to be important, and perhaps this is one of the areas where charities have something to offer to other sectors in terms of how we engage with our supporters and donors. If you think historically, people have received communications through direct marketing, and now that's moved more towards digital channels, and charities have lots of ways that they encourage people to engage with them on an ongoing basis through volunteering, through supporting our campaigns, and that sort of thing, even down to, for example, if you donate to a charity shop, if you want to be a gift aid donor, you'll often be given a little card just so that you remember that that's the charity that you're giving your clothes to. Our fundraising teams tend to have both acquisition teams and retention teams. The one thing that I think charities have traditionally not been so good at is ongoing dialogue. Our communications have tended to be quite catalyst driven, and I think that's to do with the way that we have been structured traditionally as organisations. So our campaigns teams have worked on campaign spikes and communicated around those, and our fundraising teams on fundraising events.
and we haven't been structured to enable ongoing storytelling. I worked for Oxfam previously before I came to the National Deaf Children's Society, and we just started to restructure our teams to enable that before I left. And now we're doing something similar to that at the National Deaf Children's Society.
Oh, that's really interesting. Well, I think we're all on the same page. I'm just going to share the poll results because I think that's really interesting, actually. So predominantly people are agreeing, yes, there's been this shift, and actually retention is now as important as acquisition, which I think is brilliant. So for 50% there. So that's really interesting. So I think we're all coming at this topic in agreement that it's really important that you know, we do need repeat customers. It's one of the most vital things that we need to look at. You've mentioned a few already, but are there any sort of critical elements that brands need to focus on? Annie, you said sort of driving those habits. I think a few others were mentioned as well, but is that what you'd say is the most important area brands need to look at?
I think it's such a huge topic, and dependent on your brand and the product that you sell, you might focus on different areas, but there are some really good examples of how brands are starting to use personalization and technology to understand how to increase engagement and how to encourage people to come back and you know, as we said before, build habits around products. So, you know, for example, if you look at some of the big newspaper publishers, you know, personalizing homepages, for example, or looking at content recommendations on one area of the homepage, so that as people come back, they see more of the things that they're interested in. You know, these are kind of tech-driven examples, you know, dynamic experiences. We're at MPP, we're experimenting a lot with, you know, dynamic pricing on renewals for subscribers, looking at dynamic experiences, paywalls, looking at collecting more first-party data. So a lot of people are looking to understand also how customers can tell them more easily what they like, and that's helping them guide their product strategy and that side of things. So I think it's such a huge topic, but there are tons of good examples, whether it be, like I say, you're more sort of active, where the customer tells you what they like. You know, BBC, for example, do that really well. When you sign up, they ask you the topics you're interested in, and then they'll send you newsletters, they'll use email campaigns that bring you back regularly to their core products. And like I say, on more of the passive side, I mean, it's fascinating. I think the trouble is not everybody has a big data science team or the tools to be able to experiment. So I think that the key is to try and find a few top tips that everybody can work with. You know, first party data is relatively easy. We can all ask our customers for feedback, various different formats. So, you know, that's a really great place to start, isn't it? But, you know, for bigger budgets and you know, bigger reach, certainly there's all sorts of cool technology that will help you understand how to engage readers better.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Paul, what are your thoughts? Are the critical elements brands need to drive repeat business?
Yeah, sure. So look, in our experience at Glassbox, creating smooth digital experiences and executing struggle-free, frictionless journeys for online customers is key to getting customers back to the website to make repeat purchases in the future. If you get the experience wrong, customers will either walk away before they make their first purchase, or they'll struggle on almost grudgingly and make a purchase, but you'll never get them back to the website in the future. So it's in our world, it's all about making the experience as smooth and frictionless as possible for customers.
Okay, no, that makes sense. I know Ash, you're going to agree with that.
Yeah, funny that, isn't it? I mean, certainly some points that both Anna and Paul have touched on is around, you know, is really getting a better understanding of your customers through whatever tools you have available to you. You know, I mean, not everyone has budget for the biggest kind of tech and research and tool stack. There are simple things that you can do at any stage to really better understand your customers. What motivates them? What anxieties do they have? Why do people come back? Why are people using your product? And use some of those insights start to better inform the way you communicate and deal with your customers. So, one of the biggest areas that we look at outside of acquisition is really that onboarding flow, is what happens once someone makes a purchase. We know that the first 30 days are super important in terms of building those habits of engagement and starting to tick some of the boxes which lead towards a renewed customer rather than churn. And a lot of that comes from, yes, data. Your data tells you what your customers are doing, but it doesn't tell you why. So it's around finding the right research tools. It's around speaking to your customers, and triangulating the different insights that you have to make a better experience for those customers once they've been purchased.
Yeah, we've covered quite a lot has been mentioned here. So we've touched on personalization, digital experience, data and insights. Many more, I'm sure I didn't note down. Aisha, have you got any other elements to mention?
Yeah, I think all of those things are really important, but I suppose I'm going to say something a little bit more touchy-feely about the charity context. So when people give money to charity, they tend to want to feel good about themselves. So a lot of what we do, as well as creating that experience, is also to create engagement through what we say about the people that we're engaging with. So we tend to use language that indicates generosity, that indicates kindness for people, and we have shown that reduces attrition in our donor base. Also, people tend to give out of a sense of moral or religious or ethical obligation, and they do that with the intention that the money is used in the way that they spend it. And it is a big thing for charities to ensure that they engender trust with the people that give them money. And when that trust is lost, the fallout can be huge. One of the things that, however, I did find, because I worked at Oxfam when the revelations of how some of our emergency response workers had worked in areas of the world became public, is that there is a core of the support for your organization that is extremely passionate and is willing to go above and beyond and make up for the shortfall where other people are not convinced by what you do. And one of the first things that was said to me when I joined Oxfam is that you need to bring people with you. You need to make them part of the story, part of the family. You need to create that kind of brand loyalty, I suppose you'd call it, that tells a story both about yourselves and about the person that's supporting you. And particularly, I think, with the rise of social media, making our story part of people's personal brands is very important for charities.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, isn't it? Sorry, Anna, you were going to say something.
Yeah, no, I was just going to agree with Aisha. Really, it's about creating communities, isn't it? And that's as a consumer, that's what we value, isn't it? Being part of a community, particularly through lockdown and COVID, connecting with other individuals online. So that's the reason, a value add, if you like, for me to come back again. And I think your point on trust, Aisha, is very valid too. That's something that we see in news and media, and actually The Guardian do a fantastic job of communicating very clearly, and The Guardian's interesting because they do have subscriptions, but actually they have memberships and they have donations. And the reason why that works for The Guardian is because people trust them and they trust their brand. And it's all about, if you look at their strategy and how they've developed their audience and their revenue through that, it's all about what you talked about, Aisha, which is messaging and being clear on that value and talking to the people that donate to you about what you're doing, what your mission is, and allowing them to trust you and be part of a community. That, ultimately, that type of engagement is the thing that really locks people in to keep coming back and to stay.
Definitely, I think that does apply. Trust, as you said, is relevant to all brands, that we want to have that relationship with brands. I guess there are some perhaps that you just want a quick purchase and that's the end of it, but I think it's becoming more and more important. And it's that kind of digital experience. You can have a really smooth digital experience, but if they don't really add more, they don't show a bit of personality, there's nothing hooking you in. That leads me on to, so I know Paul and Ash, obviously, the businesses focus on that digital experience. I'll put a poll up for that in a second. But Paul, why do you think it's the key battlefield for clients? Do you think that what the guys have been talking about there with trust is one of those reasons?
Gosh, yes. I mean, that's such such a good question, Susie, and it needs a long answer. But just to be sure we're all on the same page, I'm going to take the term digital customer experience to mean the sum total of all of the online interactions that a customer has with a brand. So it could start with a website, but it could also include mobile apps, chatbots, and other channels where the touch point is key. And I think what really matters is the perception that customers take away from each and every experience. Is the experience cumbersome and frustrating, or is the customer struggling to complete a goal? Or is the process frictionless and memorable and delightful? I guess it's no secret now that customer experience is about to overtake price and product as the key brand differentiator, the key battleground, as you described it, Susie. And we've all seen the recent studies and reports around that. If they like you and continue to like you, then customers are going to do business with you for a long time, and they'll recommend you to others. Experiences that spark meaningful and powerful emotions will shape buying patterns and brand loyalty into the future. And that's really where digital experience analytics solutions like Glassbox come into play. Glassbox helps customers to fix the parts of the experiences that are broken, building higher and higher amounts of lifetime value over time. And the results can be quite staggering. A recent study from PwC found that over 2/3 of consumers will pay more for a good experience, and they'll have over a 300% higher lifetime value. So your brand needs to become an experience leader, or customers will look elsewhere. But get it right, and they'll come back to you and your website to make repeat purchases into the future.
Yeah, I guess it's about also bringing your personality, the brand to that experience. So it isn't just making it frictionless. It's actually also on top of that. It's so complicated, making it personable and interesting.
Absolutely, making it memorable. Absolutely, through personalization tactics. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean the Boston Globe did something similar as well. They focused very much on the value proposition Aisha was talking about, and over time that grew their engagement, but it allowed them actually to increase the price of a subscription. So I mean it is fascinating. I guess my world is always consumers on an auto renew, recurring subscription, Netflix style, and looking at keeping them there, whether that be voluntary or involuntary churn. But it's interesting. I guess your world more so, Paul, is repeat visits. So one-click transactions, frictionless checkout, social sign-in, that kind of thing. It's I guess we see both angles, but we both agree that the lifetime value is the important bit.
Yeah, I agree. There's lots of similarities there, Anna. Absolutely. Yeah.
Which parts of the customer journey, Paul, would you optimize first, or is there anything you would recommend?
Gosh, well, my advice would be to optimize absolutely everything, from the shopping cart to the checkout, to the contact us form, the product pages, the search capability, the promotional codes. I probably missed some, I'm sure, but optimize everything, including the account pages as well, where customers might be able to self-serve and change details and passwords on the website or app.
Yeah, I mean, from your perspective, how do brands sort of start to prioritize that? Because there is so much they could optimize, and how do they understand what's most important?
It's a good question. I mean, obviously, if you go through and forensically look at, take an objective view of your entire kind of journey, there are so many things that you think, oh, this, we could work on this, we could fix this, and it's important to have a very clear prioritization framework of, and that looks at, well, what is the impact of doing this? How complex is it to be able to make this work? What is the potential commercial impact of doing this? And you can start to use those things to prioritize where your focus starts from a lot of that optimization point, from all of those optimization jobs, and that will help you. That will help you then to look across your entire sort of team. So looking at from acquisition, onboarding, sort of engagement, your retention work, your win back, whatever it is, whether that's and it's understanding the importance of the which tests or which pieces to optimize first, what the value of doing that is, and how to get how to get started. And I think one of the things that's super important for a lot of our clients is really looking at the revenue impact of doing so. That's typically a key differentiator for lots of the work that we kind of do is, okay, how much money can we do? Can we build a business case for implementing this and getting the sort of tech debt to get something built or get something tested?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I've just published the poll from the attendees there, so it's kind of, it looks like most people are sort of on an ad hoc or just starting to test. But there are a few there who they do test and optimize a lot, and it's high priority. So that's really good news. I like to see that, and not really. So that's really good. From your point of view, Aisha, sort of in digital experience and looking at the journey, can you share a bit about what you've been doing?
Yeah, so we've been creating user personas and mapping journeys for our family member audience, and I will probably talk a bit more about that later on. In the process of doing that, we have focused quite heavily on acquisition, and that's because that was the goal of that particular project, although we have mapped the journey right through, and we'll work through it as we develop. But what's been interesting, I suppose, in our context, and I would expect it to apply to other charities, is the interplay between on and offline engagement with people through that journey. When we started to map out the journeys where there were sort of gaps in how users would respond digitally, we started to fill them by some kind of offline engagement with people. And traditionally, we found that we have raised more money through face-to-face fundraising than other forms of fundraising. And we found it easier to convert one-off donors into repeat donors through telemarketing rather than digital. But I suspect as AI becomes more sophisticated, more ubiquitous and more affordable, we'll start to see digital filling the spaces where we have that interplay with offline engagement.
I can totally see what you're saying there, that I think it's a little bit sad. I think the human intervention is quite important as well. Do you think that's ever going to go? Do you think like we need human intervention? It's like AI is a bit scary, isn't it? Like everything suddenly becomes automated. Lots of people do want to speak to someone. I think if they're handing over their donations, I don't know, I kind of think it should stay. Sorry, on mute.
There's a huge amount of value, I think, in knowing when to automate and when to add humans into the mix. And I think there's never going to be a stage where we don't need a human. We've all been there screaming into a phone saying, "Speak to a human." And as businesses, we want to, where possible, make the best experience possible, not just in terms of our own digital ecosystem, but also talking to a customer service, talking to a sales rep, understanding when is the best time or the optimum time to speak to a human or to automate that journey. And when you do automate journeys, is making sure that you're doing that for a practical reason, because it's better. Because typically the question that you may have has been answered 1,000,001 times, and we can very easily find that and help you to do that. But understand, but I think this is one of the things that's universal across all optimization, is really making sure that you and your teams go through those stages with your customer hat on, because often there's the kind of what you call the curse of knowledge is, oh, well, this is obvious. It's clear to me as a product owner what this means, but as a customer, it's often very, very unclear. And that causes anxiety, and that can stop your kind of customers from completing actions that you want them to. So it's really about going through that process, you're going through each of those kind of steps yourself, and making sure that yes, this is the appropriate way of delivering this touch point.
Yeah, Aisha, perhaps you can come back to what you were saying as well. I know we wanted to talk about sort of understanding your target audience, and you mentioned there you've been looking at personas and kind of looking at those journeys. Can you share with us a bit about sort of the multiple audiences you have to consider, and a bit about what you're doing with that specific audience? I think we've chatted obviously before this call, so that was really interesting if you can share that.
Yeah, so our core audiences as an organisation are parent carer members, young people members, professional members, our donors and supporters, and policymakers and campaigners. So we have quite a broad set of segments, I suppose. The particular piece of work that I came into the organisation to support was to investigate how we could increase penetration in of membership of families whose children had been diagnosed with some kind of hearing loss when the children were relatively young, so that we would have them as members for quite a long period of time. And we used a range of data, focus groups, surveys, digital data, to create a few user personas that we then used to model user journeys on. And we're now looking at how we can broaden that out to cover all of our audiences, and then also to map the overlaps between those audiences and the things that they're interested in and engaged with, and to make our communications a bit more sophisticated. We have a bit of a blunt segmentation model at the moment. One of the things that we have found in the process of doing this piece of work is that when our family members sign up for membership or start to investigate us as an organisation, they often are feeling quite a high sense of anxiety because they've been told something that they don't really understand and they don't really know how to deal with. And what they want more than anything else at that moment is reassurance. And there's nothing in our current offer that really speaks to that. We offer them services and we offer them products, but we don't talk to them as individuals and reassure them about what they've discovered. And one of the things that we're now looking at is how we can build a journey that creates reassurance, that creates community at all touch points through our user journeys. And I'm now working with a team on creating an MVP for an app that we can offer to parents, which proactively personalizes and communicates to them at each stage of their child's development what they might need from us as an organisation, to create a sort of lifetime engagement with those members. And as I said, we will then aim to roll that out to other audiences.
Well, it's really interesting. I can see that filtering through everything you're talking about is that kind of thinking about the audience, what they want, what they need, which I think is brilliant. I've got a poll here which I'll just throw out there, just to see what our attendees think, really. So what's your top customer data challenge? Is it actually gathering the data or identifying customer insights, or is it actually acting on the insights? Because that might sway our conversation now. But I guess, Aisha, how did you come up with sort of the methodology or the thinking internally when you sort of decided, right, we're going to look at these, we're going to do user research? Was that sort of a team perspective? Did you get any outside help, or how did you kind of figure out that process to get deeper into know your customers?
Yeah, so we did get outside help. I mean, the original project was scoped by one agency, and then we worked with another agency, and because I haven't spoken to them before this webinar, I don't want to name who they are, to then look at how we collected data around user personas and user journeys. We did most of the persona creation and the simple journeys ourselves, but then we worked with the agency to map those journeys to various actors in those journeys, the front-end actors within the organization, the backstage actors, and then also mapping them from the user's point of view, and how they proceeded from one stage to the next. It's very sophisticated, and it will inform not just the journey and how we deliver that journey, but how we work as an organization and how we're set up to deliver that journey. And the thing that was really fascinating about it for me is that this started off probably really with everyone's mindset being a user journey across a website. People probably hadn't even really thought very much about what the acquisition channel was before you got to the website. But actually, this went beyond digital acquisition channels and started to think about all of our touch points. When we talk to people, for example, our helpline, when people talk to one of our support officers, how does that fit into our overall digital journey? And it has been a really fascinating experience, and it will be wonderful to see it rolled out and see the rewards from doing that piece of work.
Definitely. I'll just share the poll results here so you can see them. predominantly people are saying that they struggle to actually gather the customer data. Obviously, we've also got identifying and acting on the insights as well, but that's quite interesting. I think my perspective always was that, oh, brands have so much data, they just are not sure what to do with it, but this is suggesting slightly differently. Paul, I guess from your perspective with Glassbox, obviously that's something that you can help with and advise on, the gathering customer data.
Yes, indeed. So, I mean, really to Aisha's point around understanding the customer journey, and I don't want this to become a shameless plug, but shameless plug alert. But Glassbox's augmented journey maps really help here by giving you an overview of the customer journey, as well as an automatic insight into the reasons why customers are leaving, and detailing any important trends in engagement across a website or an app. And using groundbreaking user timeline capability alongside the journey map gives you a very, very unique view of the journeys being taken across the website or app by repeat visitors, which is key. So understanding how those individual visitors behave on a website or app, often how they return and what they do when they're there, and then optimizing their journeys is a brilliant way to optimize and increase lifetime value. We've seen clients making really, really clever use of passing cookie values into the Glassbox solution, which gives an unparalleled view of what repeat visitors are searching for and purchasing off the back of that first visit. And I guess just one final point, if I may, is it's important to understand that each of those channels, web, mobile web, and app, are very different in terms of their experience. So you need to be analysing each of them in isolation as well as together. So simply replicating something that works for desktop across a mobile web or app is a recipe for disaster. And believe me, we've seen it happen. So currently less than 1% of mobile apps have an SDK providing session replay type capability, digital experience analytics capability, compared to websites where it's fast becoming the norm. And really, I think particularly around the app side of things, there's some serious catching up to do there across all sectors.
Yeah, one thing you mentioned there is obviously thinking about sort of gathering that customer data and how important that is, the first party data. I know from your perspective, how important is that, and what do brands need to consider when they're asking for their data? Because they've said there in the poll that they're struggling to gather data. So if they're seeking to get that customer data, that first party data, what's the most important thing to consider when they're doing that?
I think it comes down to trust. There has to be a lot of trust in a brand, which can be built up over time. Depending on the type of data, I mean, if brands want to understand the experiential data, that's where lots of solutions come into play. We can collect, Glassbox will collect all of the customer experience data across a website. It's tagless, so it can be done really easily without customers having to tag each element on a website or an app.
Is there a specific place where you'd advise, like email capture? Where's the best time in the journey?
Yeah, I see. So yes, we've seen customers using some really good tactics there to collect data, particularly around subscriptions and memberships. And the three most effective areas really are email capture, registration, pre and post checkout, and subscription and loyalty models. So when it comes to capturing an email address on the checkout page, can work really well. With an average of 2.5% of customers giving up their email address for the right kind of incentive on the checkout page. So maybe customer agreeing to be kept in touch with the latest kinds of offer into the future. We've also found that the highest rate of opt-in is achieved when the offer is placed away from any online terms and conditions, and when a single tick box is used next to the email address to accept the offer, whatever it might be. Got lots of data at our fingertips, and lots of research has been done into those sorts of methodologies. With regards to the registration process, we've seen lots of retail websites in particular offering clients the ability to create an account or go to the checkout as a guest. And this approach, offering clients the ability to go straight to checkout as a guest, increases sales conversion as it keeps the customer's focus on making a purchase. It's one less hassle for the client to go through.
There's a lot for them to think about, isn't there? Are they going to ask just for email? Are they going to set up a subscription program? What's the most? I guess it all comes back to the audience at the end of the day. Andy, you're obviously, with subscriptions is the main kind of piece there. So how focused is it on that kind of ongoing journey and sort of driving more revenue from those people, pulling them back? Do you have different ways of doing that with the technology that you guys use?
Yeah, so we have identity management as part of our subscription stack, subscription and billing stack, and usually registration strategy is kind of the first step towards monetizing content for a lot of publishers who perhaps have relied on advertising and have allowed people to access content for free previously. There's a lot of things that you can do in terms of the customer journey to introduce registrations and encourage people to give you your data. So with the changes to third-party cookies at the moment and the decrease in ad revenue, a lot of publishers are now actually considering registration walls. But you have to think about what point in the customer's journey you introduce that, and that's where we can have things like dynamic journeys, where there's a value exchange to carry on reading this article. Please give us some data. And I think if you're open and honest, and back to Aisha's point, can demonstrate value and communicate that, then there's a very clear value exchange, and consumers will be willing to give you their data. I know for our customers, when we look at registrations, we're looking at frictionless journeys. So we have single sign-on as standard. We have social sign-on, so we can do a one-click registration. We have customers experimenting with express checkouts, where you just give an email address and you pay, and then you create, a more detailed profile post-sale, where maybe you give more information about your interests and why you're engaging with the brand. So that's massive for a lot of our customers, looking at that customer journey from identifying the customers, collecting first-party data, and then understanding how we take them through that journey. So that's commonplace. In publishing, probably slightly different than some of the stuff that Paul might see on a retail website, for example, because in our case, we're always encouraging people to come back and subscribe, and collecting that data is really important. I was quite surprised on your poll, because a lot of the publishers that I speak to do have tons of data, as you said, Susie. What they struggle with is actually activating that data en masse. A lot of them traditionally in the marketers, they can do the segmentation, we can do email targeting, etc. But what's really interesting for us at the moment is looking at that more one-to-one personalization, dynamic user journeys in real time, how we can start to automate that process, either to show products, to show offers, or elsewhere in the journey to upsell, cross-sell, and increase lifetime value.
Personalization is a massive topic, isn't it? So you've also, that's something you're really focusing on to try and push ahead, so that publishers have that opportunity, and you're putting it in front of them, I guess. Is that what they're asking about?
Yeah, I mean, it's the first step, isn't it? If you have a think about, well, for me anyway, for publishing, most important thing is your brand and your value. The second most important thing, if you're a publisher at least, is the data that you have about your subscribers, whether you're going to monetize that using advertising, or whether you're going to look elsewhere about how you can monetize it with products and create lots of different revenue streams. So absolutely, there are CDPs out there, DMPs out there. Publishers have been experimenting with programmatic, and personalization user journeys for years, and now they begin to apply that to their customers. So I think there's huge potential to look at customer journeys, whether that's frictionless checkout, whether that's collecting data that's given to you, or whether that's progressively profiling and taking the information out of your CRM platform and working with that to understand where to take product, or optimize checkout flows, as Paul said. Lots of different topics there.
Aisha, have you sort of used some of these sort of tactics and things when you're collecting data? Obviously, you're able to look at do this research that you're doing at the moment. So you've obviously got data and customer data on hand. Do you ask for that kind of value exchange, the data that people give you? How does that work? Do you use some of the similar principles?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, the idea of value exchange for data. Although we don't sell data, we do use the data that we get from our member audience for our research for our work with media and for our campaigns. And the membership subscription does ask for a lot of information. So you have to have quite a lot of buy-in from somebody for them to commit to filling in the membership application form. Our membership is free, but the exchange tends to be that we encourage people, or in fact, people cannot attend any of our events. They cannot have one-to-one support without becoming a member. So the value exchange is quite tangible. People can attend events, they can get access to information and support that they wouldn't otherwise be able to. So a lot of our value, I suppose, is in content marketing. So we also ask people to sign up to our campaigns network, and then they get specific information about the campaigns that we're working on. And at Oxfam, we used to do that very much around a sort of personalized model, in the sense that if you were interested in environmental activity, we would send you communications around our environmental work, or if you were interested in humanitarian response, we would focus on that. The other thing that we do, which is really traditional and a lot of charities do it, is something called hand raisers, which are low-level campaign actions where people sign up to a petition, and then we follow up with some kind of donation ask, either through telemarketing or through email marketing.
Yeah, so there's some personalization going on there. I guess it will evolve and continue to improve as you get more and more of this insight that and journeys that you're looking at as well, which is exciting. I guess let's stick with the personalization question then. Can anybody sort of suggest any other brands who are doing it really well? Is there any in the published sector who are really embracing it? Anna, on your platform? Charging ahead, yeah, and content. I think that was important, what Aisha said about giving that content and that information they're interested in.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you've got kind of different sectors, haven't you? You've got active personalisation, so like the BBC, where you log in and you tell them what you're interested in, and then they will be able to send you newsletters, encourage you to see particular programmes, that kind of thing. So you've got that kind of active personalization, but then tons of more passive, tech-driven personalization. So New York Times is a great example. They've just added what you've missed to their homepage. It's really difficult to do in news, actually, because it's controversial, isn't it? You don't want people to be in echo chambers, but at the same time you want to do content recommendations to encourage engagement and bring them back. But they're doing some really interesting things. Sky, I think, look at personalization in terms of their product. So everybody has a Sky user account, but if you log in, you can pick and choose the entertainment, the kids' parts, and you can pick the areas and just pay for the bits that are valuable for you. I think BuzzFeed do that really well as well. They're free, but again, they will look at quizzes, live news. This is something that's quite common that we're seeing around product at the moment, is that this idea of kind of breaking down your content into sections is a way to encourage people to pay. Maybe they don't want a full subscription, but they'll pay on demand or just for a particular area of content, sport, etc. Boston Globe is another example. I mean, there are absolutely tons of publishers looking at all of the different elements, whether that be product, looking at paywalls, looking at renewals, personalized renewals, pricing. So I think there are tons of brands out there that are doing this really, really well. Yeah. But like I say, it's a huge area.
Yes, so you can look at other brands, and I think you can learn across sector as well. So just looking at a publishing brand, it's still, you can take learnings and make it relevant to your brand if that's not the sector you work in. Certainly. I've just done the poll there, so predominantly people are saying they could do a lot more. So yes, they do some personalization of experiences, but they could do a lot more, which I think we'd probably expect, wouldn't we? So yeah, have a look at some of those people that Anna mentioned and see what you can copy.
I do think with personalization there is a tendency to to need to do personalization before you've done the basics, before you've got a lot of the basics of the experience right, is that we need to do it. We need to personalize because it's a word that we keep hearing about. We want to make better experiences, but often a lot of the things that we've talked about earlier on in the webinar still ring true and still need to be solved and resolved before you start to go down the route of personalization. It's kind of like walk before you can run. And while it's super useful and it's a really great experience for customers, if you're not doing the basics in terms of understanding what it is they're looking for, really sort of positioning your site, your engagement, onboarding flows, your apps, whatever touch point it is, and really optimizing those before you start moving down the route of personalization is typically what we would look at for a lot of our clients. I mean, just in terms of sort of great examples of personalization that I've seen is a company called Spoke. So they do kind of chinos and shorts, but their value exchange is straight off. They get me to register by going through I've got quite a weird body. I think most of you've got something kind of strange. That when I buy trousers, it looks like they're designed for giants because they're like this much longer than they should be. So what Spoke do is they'll go, tell us what measurements you need, what sort of fit do you like, what sort of things do you do? Really, really simple, but then they're able to tailor their experiences to exactly what I need. If there's a sale, they don't talk to me unless they've got something in my size. And that's and that sort of light touch personalization is really cool, and I really enjoy that. But it's it harks back to what I think a lot of the guys have said about that value exchange, right? Is that I bought into that ecosystem because they would understand me and it would only serve me stuff that's going to be relevant. And a lot of the time when we're looking at, as brands looking at collecting data and understanding our customers better, we're often not asking the right questions or experimenting around what's the best way and what's the best place to start collecting customer data, and what is the best value exchange. That's and that's typically where something like experimentation can come in, is whether it's publishers of how much of this article do we show you. Do we have a kind of warning growl before we put a registration wall in? There's lots of and that's kind of where experimentation comes in. Is what is the best way to drive this action with this specific audience? And there's so much variation that without sort of optimization and experimentation, you're never going to get there through guesswork.
Yeah, you can't do it on a gut feeling, can you, Wash? That's that, and I think that's the value of the technologies that are available at the moment. The whole MarTech space has just absolutely boomed, and all of a sudden we've got all of this new intelligence. We don't need to guess anymore what our customers want. That there's data available, and I think as you kind of hinted to before, Susie, the key is how do we activate it? And sadly, not everybody has a data science team in-house. We can't all be, the Globe and Mail and have a 50-strong data team who built their own, AI tool. But we can apply the science, as Osh was saying. So just having a really good first-party data strategy, asking customers to tell you what you want, and then starting small and building on that. So it could be waist measurements, it could be, I don't know, your contact lens prescription and how regularly you want to pay, or, it could be, simple things like that everybody can do. And registrations technology, it's easy. It's one of the easiest projects you can do. It doesn't need to be a big mammoth integration. We do them all the time. It is super easy. And that's your starting point, isn't it, on understanding customers and what you then do and how you choose to monetize them. The world is your oyster, isn't it? I think.
Well, I think that's a very good point to pause, I guess. We're almost out of time, but we do have a couple of questions. So I just want to ask those and not just let us carry on chatting, which sounds like we could chat for another half an hour. But the specific question I think is probably for you, Aisha. It says, in a sector like charity where every penny counts or every pound counts, how do you get internal buy-in to do things like user research and experiments? So obviously you said there you did have to use an external partner. How do you get buy-in to do that?
Well, I mean, I think this is probably true for every charity in every context, that charities believe in what they do. And if you can encourage senior leaders that doing this piece of work will improve the way that we're able to do our jobs, then that's how you get buy-in. The reason we got buy-in for the project we're doing is because our penetration rate of families with deaf children is around 30%. And obviously for our senior leaders, they'd like to see that at 100%. So the carrot of potentially getting closer to 100%, helping, supporting 100% of families with deaf children is the aim of the project.
Yeah, so it's going back to what the business goals are, and then this demonstrating that this will get you on that first step to that path and then to achieve that. Okay, that's good. Another question, what brands do you think are leading the way with digital optimization and why? So we may have touched on this a bit with the personalization examples, but are there any specifically testing and optimizing that you know of?
I was going to share this earlier because I did look at a charity that I think is doing very well in terms of digital optimization. Okay. And I happen to know that they're also structured internally to work in an agile marketing way, which is really interesting to me. So they've broken down their teams into squads that focus on different stages of the user journey, and that's Save the Children UK. So if you go onto the Save the Children UK website, to make a donation, it's frictionless. They give you an opportunity to look at where and how that money is spent in quite a playful way, and then access to loads more data if you want it. And then the email that you receive immediately afterwards uses all that language that I told you about making people feeling valued. It also demonstrates trust by showing you exactly what your donation is so that you can check it, and then how to contact somebody if you want to speak about the donation you've made or to engage further with the organisation.
Yeah, so they've clearly listened to their customers, know their needs, and then they've tested probably and looked at that journey. Okay, no, that's great. Is any other examples from anybody else, or shall we leave it there?
I think from a charity, I mean, we've got a lot of experience of working with charities within that sort of space, and typically there's there are two kind of issues that we come across. One is everything's always been done this way. Why do we need to change? And it's providing evidence to help make more informed decisions. So that could be data or customer research. And I think the second piece is typically, I think, leaning into what Aisha said, which is around gaining sign-off, and typically it's around providing a compelling piece of evidence and creating a business case to create some of those changes. We've demonstrated we can do this. Here's the case for doing more of this with the experimentation, optimization, or research. And that's kind of universal, really. It's across charities, but also across many businesses, is helping using data and research to help to build a business case for doing more experimentation so you can grow your business. Yeah,
nice place to end on. Thanks, Osh. Thank you all for joining us. Actually, it's been really useful morning. Hopefully our attendees have found some useful insights that they can go on to think about for their own businesses and organizations. If anybody wants to contact any of us, we are all on LinkedIn, and Daydot, we will send you a follow-up email with a roundup of this session and the recording. So keep an eye out for that and the survey. But thank you to all our panelists, and I'll look forward to the next webinar. Keep an eye out for your invitations, everybody. Thanks. Have a good day, everybody.